Out of the Fulton County Jail, an inmate stabbed to death.
LaShawn Thompson was found face down in the toilet in his cell, and he was covered in insects.
The 8th victim, Sam Lawrence, who wrote a letter asking for help just 4 days before his death.
His last words was, "Get help, please."
And now the Justice Department is launching an investigation.
It will cost roughly $40 million per year to move roughly 1,000 inmates out of the region and out of the state.
I got a detainee that wants to talk to you all.
I had knives put to my throat, and I had to call my mom telling them, "Please wire somebody some money or I'm gonna be killed."
Those inmates are not props. They are people. Let's stop playing politics while folks are dying.
Take a look. Here are the faces of the 10 people who died in the county's custody.
Attorneys comparing the jail to Gitmo, the infamous Guantanamo Bay detention camp in Cuba.
You are holding people for long periods of time without charging them with a crime.
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
Until we address those systemic harms that have led to the death of so many in custody, we will continue to see these problems.
Hi, I'm Andy Perotti. Tonight, we investigate the crisis at Fulton County's jail, why overcrowding exists, how it's creating deteriorating conditions, and possible solutions. These are the 10 people who have died in the jail so far this year. None of them convicted of the crime they're accused, all of them dead before their court date. For the first time, Fulton County's top elected leaders sit down with Atlanta News First for exclusive interviews to answer tough questions. They are the sheriff, the district attorney, the county chairman, and the chief judge. But before we hear from them, listen to the people the jail impacts the most, some comparing to America's notorious Guantanamo Bay prison. They're calling Georgia's Gitmo.
It really scarred me for life.
D'Anthony Tolbert has never served in the military, but says what he witnessed while detained inside the Fulton County Jail felt like war.
I saw people die. I saw people get stabbed.
Atlanta police arrested D'Anthony and his former roommate for murder in 2019. This past July, his attorney argued the district attorney had no proof he was involved.
There's no physical evidence that Mr. Tolbert assaulted anybody, fired a gun at anybody, or drove the vehicle that night.
Frustrated, the 25-year-old spoke out in court.
City German Vernon, you know this is my life. So I only have one chance.
After waiting 4.5 years behind bars to prove his innocence, the jury found him not guilty. How did this impact your mental health?
I ain't even gonna lie to you, it tore me up. I'm scared right now because I don't have nobody. I don't have a support team. When I got out, it's like they don't even have programs to help people in my situation. I really did lose everything, and even my kids. I can't even have my family no more.
He lost his home, lost his job, and he almost lost his life.
Stab right here.
Each marking on his back and arms, stab wounds from knives and shanks. Right there,
right there.
there. They just keep going. And this all happened at the jail?
Yeah.
I mean, are you surprised that you're alive?
Yeah. I thank God for it every day.
An Atlanta News First investigation uncovered D'Anthony is one of hundreds of people inside the county jail waiting extraordinary lengths of time for their day in court. Overcrowding the jail caused by an unprecedented backlog of criminal cases. County records show as of September, at least 690 people detained more than a year in jail, 142 waiting 3 years, and at least 19 people waiting more than 5. That includes 61-year-old Darrell Lowe, who has waited 13 years behind bars for his trial date. None of them convicted of a crime, all of them in the sheriff's custody. Fulton County Sheriff Pat Labat. Are you frustrated when you hear these numbers?
Well, I'm not frustrated. Let me tell you why I'm not frustrated. I knew when I took office, I knew when I ran for office that the system was broken. I just didn't know how broken.
The court backlog impacts more than people accused of crimes. Victims and their families suffer too.
We're back on the record with State versus Jerez Sanders.
This past August, Latarcia Gaither takes a seat inside a Fulton County courtroom, waiting for a verdict she worried would never happen. Facing Jerez Sanders, accused of killing her longtime boyfriend Timothy Jackson and 2 others at this home in 2013.
I needed justice to move on. I need this to move on.
Latarcia is the one who found Timothy dead inside.
You go down the hallway, there's a bedroom to your left, and there's 2 bedrooms. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, finding somebody that you love and care about with their head blown off like that. That took a lot from me. It destroyed me.
A jury found Jerez guilty of murder, but he sat in Fulton County's jail for nearly 10 years until his trial.
I felt like my life was on hold. Like I couldn't move on because I needed closure from this.
Was your jail ever intended to house someone 10 years waiting for trial?
Well, the direct answer is no. We were never intended as a penitentiary or as a state prison. It is a pretrial facility.
The sheriff says when the jail was built in 1989, it was almost immediately over capacity. Sections of it are now falling apart. Labata's calling for a new, bigger detention center focused on mental health services. Estimated cost to taxpayers, more than $1 billion. But if the backlog is not addressed, it's not fixed, what will a new jail do? Would it even matter?
Well, certainly it matters, and we've advocated for a replacement jail. This jail is, when you look at your home, you look at a single family home that was built to house a single family, and then the day it was open, you have multiple families in that home. The pipes weren't rated for that. The lighting wasn't rated for that. The walls weren't rated for that. And that's what has occurred here.
Sheriff Labat says his office is caught between the district attorney's office and judges, waiting for them to move cases along, while his jail and the people inside suffer the consequences.
I think there's enough blame to go around. I can tell you who's not to blame. Not to blame is the sheriff's office.
If you're on Medicare...
Enter Fulton County District Attorney Bonnie Willis, who took office in January 2021.
What they would like to do is to paint a scapegoat for inaction that they've taken. It is unconscionable the way that our jail is. They've known our jail is in that state. People need to be in safe conditions.
But does the DA's office contribute to the problem? According to records from the county clerk's office this past summer, there were 1,232 people inside the jail who have yet to be indicted. About 60 of them waiting more than a year. People not formally charged with a crime, waiting for District Attorney Bonnie Willis's office to take the case to a grand jury to determine charges, while they sit behind bars.
People need to be timely indicted, timely tried, and given the opportunity to force the state to prove its case.
Atlanta criminal defense attorney Andrew Fleischman criticized the DA on Twitter earlier this year, writing, "Willis has been keeping people in jail without trial or even indictment for years. Wright Street has become our very own Gitmo." Fleischman comparing the county jail to the Guantanamo Bay detention camp in Cuba, which has held suspected 9/11 terrorists without trial for decades.
You are holding people for long periods of time without charging them with a crime or giving them due process. And that's exactly what happened at Gitmo.
That in particular should be a high-level point of frustration.
This past September, Fulton County Commissioner Bob Ellis raised the issue during a meeting, upset more progress had not been made after allocating $75 million in federal pandemic aid to address it.
I think collectively, everybody's pissed at the quality, the level of results.
What's your reaction to that?
That Commissioner Ellis is not a supporter of criminal justice, is ignorant, doesn't know what he's talking about most days, is just not really trying to make himself informed of the issues or the progress. Commissioners have tried to paint this picture that somehow incarceration and indictment tie hand in hand, and they don't.
People arrested for felonies are entitled to be released on bond after 90 days, but that's not a guaranteed get-out-of-jail-free card. If they are not indicted by that time, it means a Superior Court judge likely determined they were a flight or security risk at their initial bond appearance, not eligible for a bond due to an unrelated pending charge, or they couldn't afford to post bail to be released.
The other thing is, in the old administration, they would take whatever the police faxed over and they would simply indict. There was no investigation done. We changed completely the way we did business, meaning that prior to someone being indicted, we had to actually have the evidence. That sounds novice to people, but they were not doing that.
So what about people waiting years in the jail for their trial dates? Specifically, the 19 who have waited longer than 5 years. Why is it taking so long to get to trial?
So your information also is not complete, but you could have easily pulled it. All, not some, 100% of them have competency issues. They are certainly in custody, but they are in custody at Georgia Regional.
Georgia Regional is the state mental health hospital the county uses to treat inmates with mental illness. District Attorney Willis says her office can't prosecute someone until a doctor determines they are competent to stand trial. Until then, some go back and forth from the jail to Georgia Regional for treatment. Atlanta News first uncovered 7 of the 19 waiting 5 years behind bars have never been to the hospital, all stuck in legal limbo.
When you have people that are so severely mentally ill, extremely violent, not someone you want on the street, not someone your neighbor wants on the street.
While Willis says her office has made strides reducing the court backlog, it continues to grow. So far this year, pending criminal cases spiked to 23,000, a 28% increase since December. The DA says she needs more staff to tackle it.
I'm also not going to apologize for saying this office needs adequate resources. We need more investigators and more lawyers and legal support staff that can support them.
Coming up, Fulton County's chief judge responds to criticism he's not doing enough to address the problem. Plus, why the head of the county's commission blames the public for the jail's failures.
The voters are at fault in all of this from my perspective. It's your fault. The voters are at fault in all of this from my perspective. It's your fault.
That's Fulton County Chairman Rob Pitts blaming the public for problems at Fulton County's jail. But Pitts, who heads the commission responsible for funding the detention center, doesn't stop there. He says elected judges share responsibility too.
I'm hoping that we will have this same lively debate when we get to the money part of this meeting today.
The head of Fulton County's commission, Chairman Rob Pitts, says he's tired of allocating millions of tax dollars to address problems at the jail without getting better results. Despite deteriorating conditions while over capacity for decades.
Thursday afternoon, a triple stabbing left one inmate dead and 2 others injured.
To date, we have had 10 deaths in the Fulton County Jail.
The Department of Justice is investigating the jail's living conditions.
A brand new jail is not going to solve the problem if you don't have good management in that jail.
The chairman wants to renovate the current jail instead, saying the detention facility's real problem is rooted in the county's historic court backlog, forcing inmates to wait for trial too long. As of September, hundreds of people were waiting more than a year in jail, dozens of others more than 3. Innocent until proven guilty, languishing behind bars while they wait for their day in court.
Reason for the jail being overcrowded, if we're honest, is that those who are responsible for processing those in jail through the system are not doing their job.
The chairman puts most of the blame on two groups of people. First, Fulton County Superior Court judges who are elected.
Some work, some do not. Some come to work at 10 o'clock in the morning, go to lunch at 12, and play golf. We monitor this. The judges who are working come to my office and tell me which ones are working, which ones are not working.
So which judges are we talking about?
Well, I can give you a list of them.
Each month, the county publishes this chart on its website, identifying how many inmates in the jail are assigned to each judge. As of late August, at least 9 of the judges were juggling more than 100 defendants in the jail.
I propose let's take an ad in the AJC on a weekly basis, a full-page ad, and list what judges are working and which ones are not.
The second set of people Chairman Pitts blames for the jail's crisis, the public.
The voters are at fault in all of this from my perspective for electing and re-electing the same people. If you get these same results, it's your fault.
That might be a hard pill to swallow for viewers and the public thinking, well, we expect you to do better. Don't blame us for simply trusting you to do the job.
Not the Board of Commissioners. We don't run the jail. We don't indict people. We don't charge people. None of that. We're trying to solve a problem by providing the resources, which we have been very generous with.
Up next, a prediction about the jail's future from the county's top judge and his response to the chairman's criticism.
This particular issue of overcrowding in the jail is a collaborative effort.
Hundreds of people inside Fulton County's jail have waited years for their day in court, overcrowding the facility, creating dangerous conditions. The county's chairman blames elected judges for not doing enough to address the problem. We sat down with the court's chief judge to get answers.
Motion on the floor is to rescind the contract.
Ask the head of Fulton County's commission who's to blame for overcrowding at the jail. Chairman Rob Pitts points to Superior Court judges and the voters who keep them in office.
Some work, some do not. Some come to work at 10 o'clock in the morning, go to lunch at 12, and play golf. We monitor this. The voters are at fault in all of this from my perspective. It's your fault.
Any other witnesses, Ms. Bell?
Fulton County Chief Superior Court Judge, Earl Glanville. What's your response to what he said?
Well, I would disagree because this particular issue of overcrowding in the jail is a collaborative effort.
Voters first elected Glanville to the bench in 2005. He's been the chief for about a year. The judge says he and his colleagues on the bench are working hard to move cases along, but they are at the mercy of prosecutors and defense attorneys' ability to get their cases ready. Case in point, there are not enough court-appointed attorneys. These are the lawyers who represent the majority of people in jail who cannot afford to pay for one themselves.
It's a problem. I understand it's a problem.
This man told a judge in July he sat in the county jail for nearly a year without an attorney.
How long have you been in custody?
11 months.
And then have you seen
About to be 12 months on the 13th
of
August.
August? Okay. And has anyone come to see you? Any lawyer?
No.
Okay.
The whole public defender system is just very important because if you don't have public defenders, criminal accused, it affects their ability to have adequate representation.
Judge Glanville says cases are also held up by the overburdened crime lab at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which can take months for it to test drugs and firearm ballistics needed before the DA will pursue charges or drop the case.
If I'm a defendant and that science will exonerate me, or at least give me a better understanding of where I stand with that case, there's nothing I can do until I get that data point.
This past December, Judge Glanville signed this order suspending defendants' ability to request speedy trials citing the pandemic and an overwhelming backlog for the reason. It ended in July, but the result, potentially thousands of people unable to move their cases forward for months. Do you think that suspension impacted the backlog during that time?
I would say so, because we were not able to try as many cases during the pandemic, given the health concerns. So, yeah, it had an effect.
To address the backlog, the judge says his colleagues created a temporary program to fund more court-appointed attorneys. They're also holding court inside the jail on Saturdays, but they need the commission to fund more judge positions. A year from now, what do you think the numbers will be, or what do you think the conversation will be?
The conversation will be that these numbers will continue to decrease. Or we're constitutionally mandated to give you time and opportunity to have your case heard, either before a judge or jury, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
County commissioners have yet to decide whether they will approve funding for a new jail that could exceed more than $1 billion. We'll keep you posted. In the meantime, you can watch the full